With the release of Wilds being so soon, there was only one thing left for me to do in Iceborne before I close this chapter. Solo Fatalis. I've beaten Fatalis a couple times at this point already, but only in groups or duos, never solo. And with Fatalis being the only monster I haven't soloed in the game yet, I felt that it was something I wanted to accomplish before ending Iceborne and moving on to Wilds. Fatalis is considered to be the final boss of Iceborne. For the most part, it's a simplistic fight in that it doesn't have too many complicated mechanics like Elatrion. The one unique mechanic of Fatalis is its empowered flames in Phase 3, where depending on how many horns you break throughout the fight is how strong its fire attacks become. If no horns are broken, then it gets its infamous blue flames, causing most of its fire attacks to be one-shots. For this reason, most people advise going for at least one horn break. Even though the fire will still be a bit stronger than its earlier two phases, the idea is that you avoid the blue flames and allow yourself to survive a few attacks. I went into this quest with the mindset of needing to break the horns at least once, trying to hit the head at every opportunity I could. I had so much trouble trying to do this though. Fatalis is not always standing on its 4 legs, but sometimes on its back 2 legs. It's pretty much impossible to hit the head when it's standing in that position, so the only opportunities I had were when it stood on all 4s, lowering its head to be in range. But even when it stood on all 4s, hitting the head consistently was still a challenge for me, as its head constantly moves, even during many of its attacks. Because of this, my first few attempts at Fatalis were dragged and felt slow. I just wasn't hitting Fatalis that much since I was focusing the head, which led me to not dealing much damage in general. I kept going for it anyway since it's what everyone recommends, and at some point finally did manage to break the horns and got rid of the blue flames. I was excited, thinking, this was it, this is the run. Only to get one shot by a fire attack anyway. It was at this point that I decided I wasn't going to try to break the horns anymore. My DPS was so low since I was tunnel visioned on the head, and the fire attacks were so strong regardless of blue flames or not, that I didn't think it was worth it to try and break one anyway. I decided that in my next attempt, I would just sever the chest and hit that the whole time. Hitting the chest constantly would increase my DPS a ton and end the fight faster. Before, when I was aiming for the head, I wasted a lot of time doing so, causing the fight to drag and last longer. The problem with this is that the longer the fight lasts, the more chances there are of me making a mistake and carding. I figured it would be better to just constantly hit Fatalis the whole time, shortening the duration of the quest overall. And in my next attempt, that's exactly what I did.
You've rescued this world from a living nightmare.
I found the Fatalis fight to be much more manageable after approaching it in my own way, and even though it wasn't amazing or anything, I was happy with my time as well. With the Fatalis quest completed, there was nothing left for me to do before Wilds. I have completed Iceborne. Or so I wanted to believe. There actually was one more quest for me to complete. It was something much harder than Fatalis, and I've been avoiding it for a while. A while ago, when I was approaching the end of Iceborne, I loved the game and wanted more content, so I downloaded some modded quests. These mods were from Raptor's quest pack, which contains multiple added quests of various difficulties. Some of these quests, as described by Raptor himself, were very hard or very stupid, and that friends enjoyed them because they were not right in the head. He only made them because friends requested them, and also leaves a warning saying these are just crazy and stupid challenges. The quest that caught my eye was one of these select few, and had the title the Final Judgement. This quest contained 5 monsters: Nergigante, Lunastra, Safi, and 2 Elatrions, all arc-tempered. I attempted this quest a good number of times in the past, but wasn't able to find success. The furthest I ever got was the last Elatrion. It had just spawned in, but I ran out of time. Which, speaking of time, this quest is 80 minutes, which sounds like a lot. For this quest specifically, it felt like nothing. There's also the Final Judgment Extreme version, which is the same quest, except it only has 50 minutes and 1 feint, but we don't talk about that. After failing this quest so much, I stopped going for it entirely, and wasn't sure if I wanted to go back. I just continued playing through Iceborne, though after defeating Fatalis, the Final Judgment popped back in my head again, as if it was trying to tell me that I wasn't finished from Iceborne just yet. I decided to give it another shot. I went into it and quickly remembered why I struggled with it so much. There's a lot of things going on in this quest, so I'll break it down and explain everything one by one. The first monsters are Nergigante and Lunastra. The quest takes place on Safi's arena, so there are multiple floors. Nergigante and Lunastra spawn at the same time, but Nergigante is on the first floor while Lunastra is at the last. I always went for Nergigante first. It was okay for the most part. The fight just got tough as it progressed, as is usually the case with Nergigante. It becomes much faster and stronger, so the beginning was okay, but it was important to just try and end it as fast as possible. Next is Lunastra. This is the first huge problem in the quest. Lunastra has both so much burst and passive damage in its flames. A lot of the time, just hitting it while standing next to it was killing me, as the flame damage added up really fast. This Lunastra also spammed supernovas, which dealt so much damage and had wind pressure, meaning you would just be standing there watching as your character's health bar goes down, eventually carding, with nothing you can do about it. I tried bringing a max windproof build to this fight, but it just didn't work for some reason. I'm not sure if this is usually the case for Lunastra, or it was part of the mod that windproof wouldn't work. Either way, it wasn't a successful solution. It also very often roared into performing supernova, meaning if you didn't roll the roar, you're guaranteed to get hit by the nova afterwards and most likely card. The only solution I had was to dolphin dive the novas. Twice, since it hits in 2 waves. This didn't work all the time though, since sometimes the flames would cart me in between jumps. On top of that, I had to play really carefully to make sure I could roll a potential roar to give me enough time to sheath and dodge the nova afterwards, since sheathing on Savage Axe takes a long time. Basically, my solution was to try and dolphin dive whenever it supernovaed and just hope for the best. I had the mentality to preserve 1 cart for Lunastra, since I usually always carded at least once during this fight. Next up is Safi. This is the biggest roadblock in the quest for me. I wouldn't cart to Safi often, but the main problem was the time more than anything. Safi has so much health due to its healing mechanic, and this arc-tempered version was just annoying to deal consistent damage against since it was so aggressive and moved the limb I was attacking so often. The challenge was to defeat it fast enough to give myself enough time to complete the quest afterwards. Lastly are the 2 Elatrions. They spawn one after another, the first being fire and the last being ice. These weren't too crazy like the previous monsters. They actually were very similar to regular Elatrion, except just a bit faster and more damage. That could be placebo to be honest, but that's just what I felt when fighting them. If I made it to this point in the quest, it was important to defeat them as fast as possible. I couldn't really take my time since Safi took up most of it. I would only have a few minutes left for both Elatrions to complete the challenge. Alright, that's the rundown of the quest. After doing a few runs of it, I was developing my plan of how I wanted to approach each fight. I decided to start with Lunastra first over Nergigante since it was harder, and depending on how it goes will determine if I continue the run. Once I get to Safi, I would switch to Greatsword. I just found it easier to use than Charge Blade in this fight, and would end it a bit faster. Lastly, at the Elatrions, I just had to keep my composure. Sometimes I get nervous that I don't have much time left, which leads me to making mistakes. I just had to remain calm as best I can and play patient. I tried this approach for the next few attempts, getting more confident each time, and I was not going to stop until it worked. I barely got it in time, defeating the last Elatrion with only 2 minutes left. I told myself prior that if I failed this attempt, I would learn dual blades and just use them at Safi. Safi was taking up so much of my time, and I figured that using dual blades could make it faster with its mounting spinning attack. Since Safi is so large, dual blades would do so much damage, and if I spammed that attack, it would go down fast. Even though it would have been interesting to learn a whole new weapon, I fortunately was able to complete the quest without having to do that. With this out of the way, I finally felt that I finished everything I wanted to do in Iceborne. I can end its chapter and move on to Wilds with no regrets. I hope this maybe encourages you to go back and complete anything you have in an Iceborne before Wilds release. Thank you guys for watching this. I heavily appreciate your support. My next video will be for Wilds once it's released, as I already have some content planned for it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, and comment if you'd like to see more content, as it's the only form of feedback I have. Again, thank you, and I will see you in Wilds.